Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys
Thank
so
you
much
for listening to another edition of the Basketball
Wherever
Teacher
in the world you
Podcast.
are
Make sure to
listening
connect
from,
with us on
whatever platform you
YouTube,
guys are
Facebook,
listening
and
on.
Twitter.
Thank you
Or
guys
reach
as
us
always
directly
for
through email
listening,
at
for sharing
basketballteacherpodcast at
all the
gmail.com.
love that you sent
Take
the
care,
show's way.
be
Really
safe, and we'll
appreciate
see
it.
you next time.
Keep that coming. I read all those messages. And like I said, thank you guys so much for joining us here for this episode. I always get to really get into and really get excited about conversations I get when it comes to training players and the idea of teaching players skills. I mean, I love talking, obviously, conceptually with guests on the 5-on-5 stuff and getting into that, but it's really fascinating and always enjoyable for me to talk to guests who are really passionate about training players the right way and building players' skills and taking a player's skill set and just taking it to that next level. And that's what we're going to talk about with our topic today, kind of the idea of training players, assessing where it is that they're at, and then getting them to mastery or proficient at a specific basketball skill. So if that's something you're into, this is going to be a great episode, and I'm sure you're going to be able to take some stuff that we talk about and use it for your players and get them to the next level with whatever skill it is that you're working on. So I'm really happy to be joined by assistant men's coach at Pfeiffer University. Coach Ryan Lundvall is joining us today. Coach, appreciate you coming on, spending some time before things get really busy for you. How are things going?
No, thank you for having me, man. Things are going well. I actually just left the lake this afternoon with some of my friends for this Labor Day weekend.
Yeah.
Got some good seafood, some oysters, some shrimp and whatnot. And now we're back in the village of Meisenheimer, getting ready for tomorrow, back to work.
Awesome, Coach. Love it. Let's talk about your basketball journey and your coaching journey. I know that you are, I believe, at least a little bit towards the beginning of this coaching journey, but I know that you had to have done a lot on the way to where it is that you're at right now. So where's the game of basketball taking you? Where's your coaching journey taking you? And how'd you end up at Pfeiffer University?
No, for sure. So this is my 7th year in college athletics. I started playing basketball when I was 4 years old. It's been my favorite sport my entire life. I played all through high school, and then when I graduated from high school, I was supposed to go play D3 in Iowa. Just went to it was a small school. Wasn't the vibe I had. I was a big fish in a small pond. So then I was like, okay, I'll be a manager or I'll be a walk-on somewhere. And so I looked at Oklahoma, University of Tennessee, and then Gonzaga. And so I went on all 3 visits, fell in love with it. They were all really good options, but the Zags, they offered me a manager position. So that was kind of my dream school going into my sophomore year. I started watching their games more, started watching their run in March Madness and stuff. So my senior year was when they went to the national championship, lost to UNC, tough game, weird refs, weird flow. But then I was like, no, this is the school, this is it. So I signed there, committed. I went all 4 years there, and then my senior year was the year we went back to the national championship. I was the head manager, and then I graduated there 2021, finished with 3 conference championships, a Sweet 16 run, an Elite 8, COVID year, and then we lost I'm in the Natty to Baylor. It still kind of wears me down sometimes.
A little raw,
I always kind of think about that. But then I ended up graduating from there, and I ended up working with the USA men's basketball team. This not the national team, but the 16U team that summer in my high school, and then I just been working high school basketball camps and middle school camps and USA camps the whole summer. And then my friend called me and was like, "Hey, there's this basketball camp up in Massachusetts. We should work." And I was like, "Okay, let me see it." It is like a 6 week long camp. I was like, "Okay, I guess." So I signed over there. I go up and work over the summer, and then like halfway into those 6 weeks, there was one night they were like, "Hey, there's a huge pickup run. You should come play." And I was like, "No, I'm exhausted. I've been watching little 9-year-olds all day. Been at the lake. Been coaching basketball in the sun." They were like, "No, no, you should come play." I was like, "All right." I go and play. I have just an awesome few games or whatever. Throwing dimes to our 6'9" kid down low. I'm making threes, getting steals, just feeling myself, I guess. And so the assistant coach, who was at Fight for the time, he was there just watching. He was there at the camp. He said, "Man, you're gonna come play for us." And I was like, "Man, I'm 22 years old. I'm trying to be a grad assistant or get my master's or go coach somewhere." He said, "No." He said, "How about this? You play 1 year and then we'll and then coach the next." So I was like, "Okay." So I flew back to Houston, where I'm from. My mom and I drove 15 hours North Carolina. Had never seen the school. Had never talked to the coach in person, only on the phone, like the head coach. He's not my boss. Went over there. I started my master's back in 2021 in August. I played for a year on the varsity team. I think we went 11-13 that year. I had like a career high of like 10 points, a few rebounds. And then I ended up being the grad assistant last year, worked for them as the assistant coach for the varsity JV and was the head coach of the freshman team, ran some camps last summer and this summer. Helped volunteer with the Habitat for Humanity. I did a bunch of player development and recruitment the past 2 years, and then I graduated with my master's in the science leadership last month, and now I was hired on as a full-time assistant. So in 3 years, I'm into player, grad assistant, assistant coach, and so now I'm making the first step into the world and ready to win hopefully a conference championship and a national championship.
And it's you've had like a little bit of everything. Like
Yes.
you've seen a lot, and I think what's kind of cool is that you have such recent playing experience that there's probably so much that as you're coaching and as you're diving in, especially in this journey right now, that you can just recall just from playing when you were in those specific situations that you can draw from, which I think is pretty unique and pretty cool.
No, I agree. Yeah. I that was one kid I was talking to the other day. He said that he refed in a middle school league, and
Yeah.
I used to ref back in Houston. And he said, "I've always respected referees now. Like now that I've seen it from that perspective, it's a whole different ball game." And in my 6 years, I've done stats, I've done film, I've managed, I've played, I've coached, I've refed, I've recruited. So I've been lucky and grateful enough to see all aspects of basketball. And I feel like an old head sometimes.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah. You are
24, but I just see the game in a different manner. I feel like compared to people my age or even older, just because I've had the experiences of doing everything. So
Yeah, you have experience truly with like basketball as a program, right? And as like a
mhm.
and all aspects that that entails. And one of them that you mentioned was about the recruiting side. And I know that that's something you are particularly passionate about, which is getting players recruited. And I was curious about your take on what gets players noticed. What is it that gets players on a university or college's radar? What can players do to stand out and really get the attention that they're looking for?
For sure. I think nowadays, with all the social media and the hype and the ball is life and stuff, they think that they have to go and score 20, 30, 40 points. But like I said, I'm an old head. I love the fundamentals. I love uh, kids who can shake your hand well and look you in the eyes and hold a conversation. And now with NIL, you have to brand yourself differently. And with the ways of social media and whatnot, I want a kid that is going to all of his uh, going to school every day, not missing homework. He's asking questions. He's always in the gym. On a kid who we can take to go volunteer somewhere, take to church, and we know he's going to dress up nice and comb his hair and look good. And that's kind of the stuff that is overlooked, especially when you look at D2 and D1 sometimes, because you want the big flashy guys and you don't always see the external factors. But when you have a D3 school, it's like you want kids who can do well in the classroom, because the academics are not are more rigorous sometimes. And so I think becoming a student athlete is difficult, because people forget the part about being a student.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and then I think kids who were just nice kids, who are welcoming, have a smile on their face, who are approachable, who can represent your program well, even outside of the court. I think that's what I'm starting to learn more when I'm talking to these kids and stuff. I'm like, how's their family life? Where are they from? Who are their friends? What do they do on the weekends? Because someone learned that you can recruit potential, while you can also recruit athletes and basketball players. But if you have a kid who's averaging 20, 30 points, but he's not going to class, or he's not with the team coach or the team bonding and stuff like that, he's like an outsider. There are times, there are rare instances where those kids work out and you end up working with them in their situation, but sometimes those are the ones you're always on and stuff. And yeah, they can produce, but if they don't fully buy into what you're trying to create and operate, it's hard when you're butting heads with people like that. And that's also going with the program and the school and everything. And I've also learned that each program across the nation is completely different. You look at NC State, that's a whole different program compared to Duke, or Duke compared to UNC, or UNC to Gonzaga, or Kentucky and stuff. So it all depends on what the coaches want and what the program needs. But personally, I like kids who are all around good people, good players, and good scholars.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I feel that I've had plenty of conversations with coaches who kind of said the same thing, and they mentioned about how there are so many ways that players can almost get themselves out of opportunities that they would have just by the way that, they may conduct themselves, like you said, with like not a handshake and not look at someone eye, or the way that they conduct themselves on social media. There's so many players, out there to choose from, and players are so visible that it's a shame that some players will do things that they might not even be aware of, that will like immediately take them out of contention, and then after that they'll never get on that coach's radar again, because there's so many others to choose from, right?
For sure. I think in terms of basketball standpoint, you can always tell which kids want to be out there on the court, which kids are gonna dive for the loose balls, or gonna get the tip-ins or the offensive rebounds and stuff, like the scrappy dogs. Like, I think those kids are always overlooked, because at least in my experience, those are the kids who always push your best players to be better. Those are the kids that push the kids who may be a little bit lazier, because in basketball, no one likes to be exposed. Like, you have everyone trying to expose each other and break an ankle and stuff. But when you start getting putback layups over kids and stuff, and you don't rebound and everything, that exposes the other kids' weaknesses and makes those kids' strengths even stronger. And so those are the kids that can play a few more minutes because of their motor. Those are the kids that can go get 4 or 5 rebounds in like 2 or 3 minutes. They may not play all 25. They may not score every single point. But the kids that make the extra pass, the kids that play on 2 feet, the kids that listen to what we're doing, I think that's the quickest way to kind of get beaten out of a spot or lose your spot, in a sense, is if a coach is asking you to do one thing and you go back to what you know in high school, or what worked for you in high school, that may not be what you need for this level, because guys are quicker, guys are smarter. And then plus, with all these years with COVID, there's guys who are 26, 25 who have grown man strength and I played in men's leagues and summer leagues and amateur events and stuff, and they're going out there and trying to get like an overseas offer. So those are the kids who you got to bring in. So the freshmen nowadays, I'm not saying they're softer or whatnot, but I think they've just been less exposed to high quality basketball in terms of pickup runs and stuff, like all because of COVID. So the parks are empty nowadays. The rec centers are empty nowadays. Everyone's so focused on skill work that no one really goes and plays pickup anymore. So like unless you're like when I was growing up, I was 13 years old playing against 30, 40-year-old men at LA Fitness. And so you had to go rebound and stuff. And you might get elbowed in the face every once in a while or getting knocked over because the guys are just stronger. But you have to just get back up and keep fighting. So when I see a kid get knocked over by a big kid and go and get a loose ball or get on the ground or make it up, like those are kids I kind of like write down because I know that they're willing to do everything they can to either make up that play or to help their team win in a different way than scoring. So,
and those players that will do all those dirty work and will go for that rebound or get that putback layup, in my experience also, those are the players that are like really dialed in with what's happening on offense, what's happening on defense. They're the ones that are paying attention, like you said, to all those things. Those are the ones that like know the X's and O's really well and have all that stuff down. And my experience have always been also like my most attentive players. So you get that plus like that scrappiness and that heart, yeah, for sure. And now I'm thinking about some memories I have playing at the rec centers with these adults who did not want to be shown up by the teenagers like myself and would maybe set some hard screens and take me to task a little bit to try and get me off the court. But that toughened me up a little bit. I still remember it to these days, right? That's funny.
Exactly.
When you are training players and you're working with players, and I know that you've worked with players at all skill level, what is your kind of process of assessing where their skill is at a particular skill and then kind of making a plan or developing a plan to like go from there?
For sure. So when I usually start, if I have a new client, he's either a middle school, high school, college guy. I usually like make them write down their skill goals or their playing goals or weight room goals, whatever it might be. Just like 2 or 3 things, and most of the time it's like it's better left hand layups or left hand dribbling, or it's a jump shot, or it's finishing at the rim, or making a quick move on the catch and rip or one-on-one stuff. So I usually start off with ball handling or usually like fingertip stuff, just kind of like feeling the ball around the world, around your body, around your head, little quick taps on the wall, just seeing where their fingers and hands are. Then I'll usually do some footwork stuff, some pivot drills, jump stop stuff, depending on their age level and their skill level. I think at all levels, you should have good footwork. Like you look at Kobe, you look at Nick Young, you look at LeBron and stuff, like their footwork, Kyrie, they know where the guy's gonna bite because their hips move this way or their legs work shift that way because of their pivots or they're staying on 2 feet or whatnot. And then from there, I usually do form shooting, some what's it called, finishing drills, a little bit of ball handling, just kind of see where they're at. And then after that initial hour and a half when I'm with them, I usually see like, okay, when they're on their left side, do they put their eyes down, or when they're shooting, do they push the ball? Where's their fingertips and stuff? And I try and look at all the details. I think a lot of skills trainers now just go straight to the tween behind the back cross to a sky hook and stuff, but they don't work on 2 foots. And I was like, my footwork drills are reverse pivots, regular pivots, putting the ball over your head, ripping low, ripping high, keeping your eyes up, talking. And that's another big thing is if you're you're gonna be like quiet in the gym. I usually tell guys just go home, or
Oh, really?
or
Yeah.
or make them just scream as loud as they can. If the gym's empty and you can't scream, either you're scared or you don't really want it bad enough. There's kids who I've said scream like There's kids who I've screamed and they screamed right in my face, and I'm like, okay, next step. But I try and build the full um um like all around
Yeah.
um player when it comes to that stuff. So then, like I said, but that's where most people forget that your hand placement and your footwork can really affect the whole development. It's like usually in college basketball, you're not going to dribble the ball more than 2 or 3 times when you catch it. And if you do, you either got to be a 25-point scorer or you got to have no one else in your team that can put the ball in the hole. So it's less of teaching them different moves, but teaching them different reads. So I would try and incorporate game-like stuff within my workout sessions, so they know it's like, okay, once you beat this guy on the elbow, you're going to have the help guy down low. So you either have to dump it off on a bounce pass, or you're going to have to throw it up to a lob, or you have to kick it out to the corner guy if that guy comes in and helps. So it's not just their skill work, but their skill work incorporated into a game like situation. And that usually changes the perspective of how they work out, opposed to just base it off like, okay, it's one-on-one drill. We're gonna do one-on-one stuff today. So I mean, there's different skill levels and stuff, and with the bigs, that's kind of my go-to because I've worked with Rui Hachimura, Philip Petruccia, Domantas Sabonis, and stuff. So when it comes to the big stuff, it's keeping the ball high, keeping your shoulders square on your layups, staying low on your pump fakes, having strong legs. You got to be powerful on your rips, powerful on your drop steps, powerful on your jump hooks. And that kind of affects the whole 9 yards, even if they realize it or not. So
Yeah, having that base or having that strength, like you said, so super important, especially in the post. So those guys take a beating, and need to have that foundation for sure. You mentioned about the series of things that you'll go over with your players, and when you are kind of just evaluating where it is that they're at, um, when you have that conversation with your player about the things that you see or the things that you notice in their game, does any of that surprise them? Are there things that you notice that maybe players aren't aware that like they're doing until it's pointed out to them? Are there any trends about those sort of things that you notice that players maybe are just blind to, or just don't really pay attention until somebody like points it out to them that they're doing it or not doing it?
no, for sure, yeah, and I've seen that across all levels. I've seen college kids be like, "Oh, that's how I shoot." I try and incorporate a lot of film when I do stuff because I know me as well. I'm very hard headed sometimes, and I won't say that I'm wrong, even though I am, or maybe this move isn't the most efficient. So as a player, you think that that move is always going to work because it has in the past. But then I'm starting to tell guys like, hey, after 2 or 3 times, you're going to have to make a different read on that because they're going to
Mm.
start going straight to like sitting on your right hand or sitting on your spin move or sitting on your drop step. So when I show them a different move or I show them a different read based off film, or if I film their jump shot or their form shooting, that's the biggest thing. No one likes to be filmed, and no one likes to hear their voice on uh, on the film. So I think that kind of humbles people a lot when they actually see themselves doing it. I think that's helped me as well when I set up my phone and do workouts and whatnot, because I think once you see it on film, if you're in the game, you're thinking, "Oh, I was in the right spot. I was right there," and then you watch film, it's like, "Oh, that was a terrible screen," or "I rolled really late on that," or "I rolled to the wrong spot," or I cut a little early, or I cut late on that stuff." So I think film has really helped us. And then we just got a huddle
Oh yeah.
subscription, so we have all the huddle cameras in the gym, and so now we can record and break down practice film, scrimmage film, game film a lot easier. So that makes our life easier as coaches. So at night, instead of bringing down film, we can already just send stuff to the guys or bring them back after they eat dinner for about half an hour to an hour and watch what they just did and practice over again. And I think with D1, you got a lot more resources, you got a lot more coaches, but D3, it's me with 15 to 20 guys maybe, or a handful of guys at a time, either doing individual film or a group film, and showing them stuff. I think, like you said, that definitely opens their eyes up a little bit, because basketball there's so many different ways you can make a move or do stuff. And I think now more than ever, the skill training is so advanced, even with little kids, that people are doing stuff that I didn't even think was possible in the game of basketball. So it's even opened up my eyes as well when I see these different skills trainers doing different moves or different drills, like Michael Lancaster or hidden training or knees over toes guys. And there's so much more science and understanding about the game, where it's
precise.
Like, exactly, like the steps you take, a negative step versus just a regular rip through. Like there's so much nowadays where it's like, even though it goes back to the fundamentals and it's all based on what we used to know, that there's so much now that it's kind of opening up to where, even though you don't need to use all these moves or all this footwork and stuff, it's still good to at least practice it to an extent, so you can at least make the right reads and stuff. So
yeah, the film thing though, and so many people mention that, but no, I agree. Like to actually see it on film, I remember just one time, even I think recreationally, just for fun, I was recording myself just playing in a game, and I was like, man, I am really slow. Like everything I do is so much slower than I think it is when I'm doing it, whether it's, a pump fake or setting something up or anything. I was like, man, do I really get into all of this that slow? But that film did not lie. It was not slowed down at all. That is actually how I played.
yeah.
So that's great though, and I think, and I'm sure, you know this for sure though, that huddle is amazing, and the stuff that you can
Mm-hmm.
do, having that filmed, and it's great, and just having having the film like you said there, because right, you mentioned it, how you and players too could be hard headed, or not really believe it, and seeing is believing, right? I think
Yeah,
that's one of the old adages there. Uh, when you're working with players, are there certain skills that you find that players maybe hit that wall in, or they're struggling with, and maybe are just repeatedly just kind of having issues with? And if so, how do you kind of work with them to try and get that breakthrough when they are hitting that wall on whatever that skill may be?
for sure. I think what I've learned, as being a college athlete, and working with some of my teammates who are now skilled trainers or are still around the game, at least a Pfeiffer or in other aspects, is
Mhm.
the change of pace and the rhythm of the game. People want to go one speed every time, and I think that also comes with isometrics, plyometrics, change of speed when you're doing your ball handling or different sprint drills or ladder drills and stuff. I think the game is kind of slowing down while speeding up, and speeding up while slowing down.
Mhm.
And it's hard for each player to kind of have that rhythm. Because I think some of that's like the finesse is coming more naturally because the players are kind of doing it at a younger age. But some guys are kind of still lacking when to know when to change direction or move off a cut. Because I think when I tell people to cut, they just run in a straight line. They don't walk their man down to a screen. They don't use their arms to swim move over guys. They just kind of go as robots. And I think we're starting to fall away from learning the game in a sense of just continuous movement like the Warriors play. And we're kind of going into this like watch this guy cook. And so it's harder to get the kids who were 2,000, 1,500 point scorers in high school to kind of buy into setting off ball screens or moving without the ball and trusting that they'll get it back. So I think people think, oh, if I cut through, I don't get it, I'm not going to touch it again. But if everyone else keeps cutting through and doing the exact same thing, your chances are higher because there's so much movement that you might get hit on a slip, or you might get hit on a flare, or you might get hit on like a drop off pass, something like that. And they don't watch enough film or understand the game enough to trust that process. And I think the scoring aspect, I know basketball's always been about scoring and everyone wants to score the ball, but getting people to be into more of a role player type of role to try and score and be on the ball and off the ball that allows for more efficient shots. I think no one wants to just pass and cut and get a layup anymore. They want to pass and cut and do a spin move to a hezzy to a float dribble to a sky hook off the glass. Like, I think just the easier shots nowadays are starting to become boring, but those easier shots are what wins games. They don't realize how a 2 or 3 dribble move wears down your energy. So if you want in the best shape, you're using half of your energy that you need to be playing on defense to score 2 points.
Yeah,
and then you try and fall in the exactly. So I think teaching them the right way to play and kind of going back to the 50s basketball, Boston Celtics, or like Kevin McHale trusting the up and under. And I think the low post for wings and guards is very underrated. I think a guard who can play in the low post and back you down and have a little post bag can really hurt you on in some teams, especially in D3 when most of the posts we are playing are 6'4", 6'5". And there's not many that are 6'9" and above. So it's a lot of 5 out or 4 around 1. So if you have a big guard and there's like a 5'8" guy guarding you and you can make a low jump hook, a low drop step, I think that can really help a team and hurt others. But no one wants to go back to that low post, high post, mid post area anymore. It's kind of falling away. But sometimes those are the best ballers in the game. You look at Tim Duncan, Dirk, Garnett, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and stuff like that. They make a living off of mid range and more efficient shots. But I guess with the 3-point, everyone becoming such good 3-point shooters, everyone wants to do that. So which isn't a bad thing. Numbers don't lie as well. But it's more the rotations of those shots. If you have a one-side shot, it's like 35%. You get a two-side shot, it's about 45, 3 or 4 or more rotations. It's like 50 to 65%. And that's where it's going to get those guys to rotate the ball, like I said, and trust that process of the buy-ins. Everyone can go get a bucket sometimes, but how can we get efficient basketball baskets when we're down by 6, and that guy's too tired to go get a bucket, or he has 3 or 4 fouls and whatnot. So that's kind of how I think, and trying to get these younger guys to think as well.
I think one of the values in a really quality skills trainer and somebody who's really trying to help their players get better is focus on the aspects of how a player's individual skill set that they're working on like fits within the overall context of like a 5-on-5 situation. And because like none of this stuff that a player is going to do one-on-one skill training necessarily is going to be happening in isolation during a game, because they're part of an offense. They're part of a bigger system beyond themselves. And I can tell from your answer, it sounds like that's something you really do work with your players on, is how whatever it is that they're working on can kind of fit into that big picture of whatever offense they may be put in.
For sure. I think last year, one thing that I like doing a lot was if I had a bigger group for my skills trainer, like 6 to 8 guys, depending on the time and stuff, because usually from like 10 to 12 guys that have class or whatever, since they come work out. So I would do like a ball handling session, maybe do some form shooting, different baskets, mic and drills, touch stuff. And then I play a lot of 3-on 3, because that you kind of have to play with all bunch of movement. And I think what I also like to do was 5v5 no dribble. Because that really goes to show who's the dogs in the gym or who's gonna really move. I think that's one of my favorite drills, because it shows you that you don't really need to dribble the ball. I forgot what team it was last year who did that really well. Rhodes or Grinnell or Camp. I forgot which team it was that they did a lot. Rutgers maybe. But being able to know when to move, when to cut, I think that's a skill in itself. When to know when to backdoor. We had a guy last year, MJ Armstrong. He didn't really get into the rhythm of going back door until the end of the season, but he had Sports Center top 10 dunks every time he did. It was a game against Johnson and Wales, and he had like 6 dunks in just because they would our point guard would draw 2, they'd dig in the gap, and he cut back door. And half of them should have been lobs, but they were chest passes or bounce passes, and he just got up and dunked it on dudes and cut well. And there's guys that I know who are really good athletes, but they just don't know how to cut. And it's sad because like they try and get all these tough buckets when they don't realize that their highlight plays are going to come from backdoor cuts from the baseline to a oop, or right down the middle if a guy lands on 2 feet, or the post is in getting double teamed. The guy who either passed it cut off him, or the opposite wing cuts right down the middle, boom, big dunk or strong layup and one, because that helps late. And I think that's a huge skill that's kind of fallen out, which is the basic of basketball, pass and cut. And I think it's becoming so basic that people don't want to do anymore. But the guys who do it, they're the ones that get scholarships. They're the ones that keep playing on, because their basketball IQ is what takes them farther than maybe their athletic ability or their skill or their shot. So
yeah, and of course, even those players who have that great athletic ability, at some point, if they want to play for a long time, they can't just rely solely on athleticism, of course, and just playing smarter, not harder, right? We talk about energy efficiency and how you can score effectively while also still being able to play defense on the other end. So no, I totally get that. And of course, when you're working with players, you only get them for a finite amount of time, and then they have their own time where they need to be getting their own work in, or using the stuff that they're being taught, and getting in reps and getting things in. And I wanted to ask you about, what are your expectations for a player when they're not with you? What should a player be doing when they're away from you, maybe on their own, working on their own game in order to achieve mastery, or to get something down?
I think being able to do their own research, to find their own drills, because that's the one thing I don't like when I'm working out a player, when we go over something and he may not master it in that hour, but he starts to get a feel for it, and he doesn't work on it until the next workout, whether it could be the next day or in a few days or once a week or twice a week or however it might be. And then we come back and I try and add on to that move and start with the move he just figured out, and he hasn't been working on it. So now we're going back to step one, and now we're spending that another half hour that we should have been moving on in the workout, still working on what we were trying to master in the beginning. I know he may not master right away, but if he doesn't work on it, or if I say, hey, when you're shooting, lock your wrist a little bit more, keep a little space in between the palm and your ball, or shoot it off the middle finger, and they don't work on it, or they don't do their form shooting at home, or they don't do their mic-ins, I'm always going to try and make sure they make the next step. But it's frustrating for me and for them because I want to be able to move on. And if they don't work on it at home, it's hard to expand it when you only have 2 sessions a week or 3 or 4 sessions a week, depending on what it is. Because you got to think, like, when you look at coaching, there's like an 80-20 split. You're only coaching 20%. So they're 80. You hope that you recruit guys and you work with guys that have that dog mentality, who want to always be better, who want to keep learning and yearning for that knowledge and for that skill set. I think with the kids that I've recruited and our team and the kids that I've always been working out with, I think they've always found that balance. And like I said, there's guys I just said, hey, I appreciate working with you. I don't think that you're kind of the right client for now, because you may not always be locked into basketball and stuff. 'Cause I want guys who are going to be bought in, because I don't want to just take the money and say, okay, you didn't get better today, but shoot, I got the $30 out of it. I want to make sure that you're learning, and I kind of keep the same mentality for everyone. That's why I ask their goals. Like on my side, they say, hey, I just want to make my freshman high school team. Okay, how can we do that? Or I just want to be able to play 10 minutes on my college team, or I want to be able to play 5 minutes without getting tired. So I try and train for what they need. If they aren't going to be a scorer, then I work on the other skill sets, the aspects of it. And then they can go and do their offensive stuff on their own. But I always kind of tell the younger guys to older guys, I'm like, when you're not here, I expect you to stay hydrated. I expect you to stretch 2 or 3 times a day. Because I hate when they're coming, oh, my legs are tired. I can't dunk, especially with the bigs. Oh, I just lifted. And I'm like, okay. So then when it's the fourth quarter, it's the last 5 minutes of the game, and you got to get an and one dunk, you're not going to get hung on the rim. You're not going to get blocked. You're not going to miss it because your legs are used to it. And I think my experience with Gonzaga and just pushing those guys to fatigue and stuff, and sometimes it's like, okay, am I pushing them too hard? But the guys who, like I said, you can always tell who wants more. Like, yeah, I missed it. Let's do it again.
Yeah.
Or the guys who are,
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was always who I was. I was running the other day, and I was trying to get to the gym before my alarm went off, my like 30-minute alarm, and I was like, don't lose. Whatever you do, don't lose. You're tired. I know, just finish it off. You got 30 more seconds. And I went and touched the door right when the buzzer went off, and I was like, my mind, I was like, oh, my side was killing me. My head hurt. It was late. I was like, oh, but like deep down, I knew that was a win. And I think getting guys to know that the smaller wins definitely add up, that you may not master it right now. You may not be perfect, but to stay patient with it. I think that's kind of my big expectation, just to let them know that if you can stay consistent with it, even if you do 5 minutes of ball handling compared to half an hour, or even if you just do 5 minutes of defense or 10 minutes of footwork drill, you add it all up. That's the same hour that we have with our skill development. So you don't need to go and murder yourself outside of our workout, but just staying consistent with it. So when you come back, I'll say, okay, cool. You've already been working on that. So sometimes I'll just scratch a whole workout because they've already mastered it or gone better at it. And I do something else fun with them. I'll do a free throw competition, or I'll do a shooting drill that I was going to plan on in 2 weeks. And I think that's the fun part, because you can kind of see the progress and kind of mix and match what you want to do based off of what they do on their own. And I think that's when you start to kind of build those relationships better. You start to feel more comfortable, and they start asking a question. So, hey, now it's like, hey, so I worked on this. Can I do this now? And if I feel like they're ready, then I was like, yeah, sure. So I try to make it fun for them, where they don't feel like it's just like they're in school. They have to do what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If they ask questions, I love making sure they feel comfortable with it. If they want to try something out, maybe not spend a whole hour or 10 minutes on it. Maybe just do, okay, you get 1 rep, go and try and dunk it. All right, cool. 1 rep, do a spin. 1 rep, do a fadeaway. Just so they feel like they have the freedom to try and just expand on what maybe I'm saying, or have fun with a little bit. I don't want them to just think this, and that. You're going to win this, and that. Maybe you might have to take a fadeaway shot in the game. Who knows? At least work on it a little bit. So
you want to have it there in case you need to have it. Don't want to say, oh, I've never worked on that. You never want to be in that situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
When it comes to maximizing players' skill set, what have you seen or been involved with personally in terms of how a coaching staff has kind of maximized a player's skill set on offense and defense? Have you seen situations where they look at where a player's skill set are at, and then, formulate things on offense or defense around that? Have you seen offensive and defensive plans and then making sure a player's skill set is geared towards that? In your experience, how have you kind of seen offenses and defensives maximize a player's ability and skills?
I think my best example of that is with Rui Hachimura when my sophomore year when I was there. Me and him were like white on rice. We had the same classes, we had the same schedule. We got up early and worked out together. We went out late at 7, 8, 9 p.m. worked out together. And I think when he knew he was about to go and get drafted, I think that's when our player development coach and I kind of flipped the script. He was doing less college moves and started doing more NBA moves. And I think seeing that switch in how we trained and what he ate and what he did and how he performed and the drills he did compared to what we were doing before, it was all fundamentals. And now we got a lot more advanced, a lot more bump fades, post fades. He's more of a mid-range guy. We saw in the playoffs he could start hitting some more threes, changing the drills. So instead of going 5 spots, 3 for 5, he had to hit 5 for 7. And it went from starting with, okay, if you hit 5 for 7 this spot, you miss it this spot, you go back a spot. And then it got to a point where you got to hit 5 for 7 each spot until you get to leave. So there was times where I was out there an extra hour or two because he kept missing free throws, or he kept hitting 4 for 6 or 4 for 7 once or twice and stuff. And I think pushing him beyond those boundaries kind of helped him. And then now I'm seeing him in the league, and I'm like, he had to guard Jokic. He had to guard all the best players out there. And I think that preparation early before he left was able to maximize him. And then so once he got to Washington first, he already had a sense of what the workouts were going to be.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of what in our D3 level, that maximizing a player now is getting them ready to go overseas. So if a kid comes and says, hey, I want to go overseas, I need your help to get in. So I'll sit down, I'll change his diet plan, I'll change his stretching plan. He changed his routine if he wants to. I'm like, bro, you got to get like 2 or 3 workouts in, plus a lift or shooting as a workout and stuff. And some guys are like, hey, you know what? That's not for me. And there's other guys who are like, let's do it. When do we start? And I think when it comes to maximizing their potential, it comes to their mindset as well. I've kind of learned that you can't want it more than the actual player themselves.
Sure.
So I think the mindset and that mentality plays a big role in how they want to maximize their potential. But I think that's the conversation that you have to have with your guys and know, hey, you can't push this guy too far, or this guy needs to be pushed a little bit more based off of what he wants, what his goals are. And then from there, everyone's different. It might just be some guys might have all the skill sets in the world, but they're not in shape because they're eating Wendy's every night. So I try and put all the factors into play when trying to make sure guys are being developed, because if I'm doing conditioning stuff with him and like I said, he's not eating well or he's not doing the right thing or drinking a bunch of soda, then I have to know about that, because then he's making my life harder because I'm trying to put in work and he's taking steps back. So I think all around communication of what they want and how they want to maximize their potential goes a long way.
And as I've noticed on your answers, and I think that's something that a lot of players hopefully should realize, is that you make your plans that you make for your players with the assumption that there are things that they've done, right? Where they've worked on something from one week to the next, or there's certain expectations of what their lifts are, what their diet's going to be. Like you have this plan in place where it's just like, hey, I'm going to put this structure in place, but not only do you have to do this stuff while we're working out, but like you need to be doing this off the court as well, so that by next week we can move on to this next level. And if you're not going to meet me there, then it's kind of like, what are we doing here, sort of thing.
Yeah, I I had mentioned that to my aunt the other day. She asked me how I was doing. I was like, I'm leveling up. And she was like, what does that mean? I was like, it's like a video game. Like, you can't always stay in level 1. You're not going to get the best weapons or the best armor or whatever like that. So the same with our guys. It's like, I love when they have a smile on their face when they finally master a move. I'm like, boom. I was like, you leveled up. Next level. And so I think with all the guys now, I'm not a huge video game guy, but I know our guys are. So I try and do a lot of video game and like analogies and make them seem like they're in a computer game or they're in a video game and how their skill sets affect that. And I think that's kind of where I like to have fun with it. I don't like to just make analogies on basketball all the time. I like to incorporate school and video games and girls, whatever it might be. However they can learn the concepts.
Whatever language you got to speak, huh?
Exactly. Now I feel like I'm getting older because I don't even know the lingo of some of these 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds on TikTok and Snapchat and stuff. And I even have those platforms. So I think
I've given up, Coach. I've given up on trying. No, it's passed me by. So now I just can embarrass them by saying dated references or dated things now and watch them wince as I try to say stuff like that. But good on you for still trying, I think. I don't know how many more years you got left before you're completely left in the dust.
I know.
But
they have me in charge of the social media, so I still stay a little youthful. Like I said, I feel like I'm an old head sometimes with my references from 2013 or something like that. I'm just like, oh Lord.
Let me ask you before we hit our concluding segment, because I know that there's a lot of coaches curious about this, and parents I know listening as well who would be interested in your thoughts on this. And that's what should, and I'll ask this specifically from a parent's point of view, what should a parent look for or know before they have their son or daughter work with a trainer? What sort of questions should they ask? What knowledge should they have beforehand so that they know if they're setting up their son or daughter with a trainer who actually knows what they're doing and has their kid's best interest in mind?
No, but that's an awesome question. I think when it comes to trainers nowadays, like I said, everyone wants to be a trainer, and there's some really good trainers. There's some guys who like doing it, but may not be helping the player in the best way possible. So I think looking at their experience, were they college players, were they high school players, were they pro players, were they overseas players, how like kind of what they did, who they coached under, kind of doing your own research, asking them, hey, where'd you learn that from, or where'd you go to school, or which offense did you run, or which defense did you run? There's people I know who are trainers who probably played middle school basketball, but they were a manager at this place and they worked under people and hadn't played basketball in a while. And I have trainers that I know who are former pro guys for 11, 12 years, former guys who are 1,000-point scorers in college and stuff. And their skill development is different than what this eighth grader might need or a middle schooler might need. But I think doing your research and kind of asking what their intentions are. I know some people who do it for money. I know some people who do it because they love the game and they want kids to get better. And then I think kind of sitting in on some training sessions and maybe talking to your high school coach, middle school coach, college coach, and seeing like, hey, if I got this trainer, will it help them get in a game? Or asking the coaches, hey, what should I tell my trainer to work on? So I think ultimately, like I said, having that conversation with the trainer as a player and a parent, because you don't want them working on a bunch of moves that they're not going to do at that level. So making sure the coach knows the trainer, making sure the trainer knows the coach, and in the gyms, like that also helps with networking and having a better conversation. So then maybe the coach can be like, hey, I like what you're doing, but hey, can you work on this instead? Because we are offering a service. So if my kids aren't playing in the game, that's on me, because I'm not giving them the right tools and resources to help them play in that position. So I think knowing what everyone wants and knowing what their coach wants, there's kids who aren't even trying to play, that they're just trying to play AAU or club ball and just want to have a highlight tape just to show to their friends, and that's all they want to do. So their training workout is going to be a lot different than a kid who's trying to get 10 to 15 minutes on their high school JV team or varsity team. So like I said, having a conversation with the trainers, not just trusting everyone that's on Instagram who makes content. Because then there's some guys who make content where I'm just like, that drill is kind of dangerous, or that drill doesn't really help, or whatever. And I try and at least try and do some of the drills, most of the drills that I see online, and then try and make my own adjustments or whatever. Because that's some really cool stuff that may not be, what's the word?
Relevant or practical. Yeah.
Conventional. Yeah. Something like that. But
there's some weird, there's some unique stuff out there for sure.
Exactly. There's some stuff like there's pool noodles and they're hitting them with pool noodles and all this stuff. And I guess that can help when it comes to contact, but I'm an old school guy. You get the pad, go hit them hard and get them used to the contact, because kids are stronger a lot. They may not be bigger, but they're definitely getting stronger. So having a strong core, having strong legs, and knowing when to jump, when to pump fake and that stuff. So like I said, it's all relative, but you got to definitely understand who's working you out, why they're working you out, and what your son or daughter can benefit from them working you out.
That's really well said. Appreciate you sharing that, Coach. To wrap up, there's a couple of questions that I ask every guest, so I'll go ahead and start with this first one, which is thinking back on your career, either playing or coaching. What is a moment from your career that you went through that you think others listening would be able to learn from?
I think my freshman year, when I was at Gonzaga, I went from always being a basketball player right to being a manager. And I was rebounding for one of our guys, and the ball hit the ground on a shot or something like that. And I didn't jog, or I missed it. I guess I didn't work hard enough to get the rebound. And the coach who was doing the workout was like, the ball should never hit the ground. And I was like, yes, sir. And from that point on, every rebound I ran to go get. Even if it bounced off the 3-point line, I sprinted. And then I did that all the way till I graduated. And I still do it now when I rebound for guys. And it's taught me attention to detail. It taught me that every shot matters, every play matters. And I was always a guy that always had to go snag rebounds and be that scrappy dog player. So, and then I think it affects in me when a ball is going out of bounds. Most kids let it just roll out. Me, I literally go dive on the floor during a workout with these big old D1 guys, and they laugh at me. But in my mind, it's like, the ball's safe. It's in bounds. There's no turnover. And that's kind of always the mentality. Like, each play matters. Like, each possession matters in this game. And I think that kind of helped me build to my work ethic, helped me being more on time, more punctual, knowing where the ball is going to go, how the ball is going to go. And it made me a better rebounder, made me a better passer, made me a better kind of student of the game in that sense, just from saying, don't let the ball hit the ground. So I do that with my rebounding drills, and I do like off the glass taps and stuff, and the ball hits the ground. You restart until everyone goes 2 or 3 times around the cone or whatever it is, and the last person puts the ball in the basket. The guy missed the tip, you start over, and it builds a sense of urgency, a sense of attention to detail, like I said. And if everyone struggles together and finally accomplish it together, that builds team morale. And it's just the smallest stuff that really matters in this game. So I think that's kind of the lesson that I learned.
It's funny that there's that mantra about rebounding, that it's more will than skill, and I think that kind of encapsulates that, right? Like, just don't let it hit the ground, right? If that's like kind of the expectation, like if you have a bunch of players who understand that or really buy into that belief, oh, the ball should not touch the ground, that's one of the best ways, I think, to kind of get the point about rebounding across, about what to do. Just get the ball, make sure it doesn't hit the ground, sort of thing. I like that a lot. And you know what, I'm a little scared, I think, of my own personal safety if I was diving for loose balls at this point, unless I stretched out properly. But
Exactly.
that'd be fun to incorporate maybe in one of my practices and just see what the reaction would be. I think all coaches, maybe if they're able to dive on the floor to save the ball once they're in practice, and even if they just do it, see
Yeah.
how your players react. That's really cool. Hopefully you can keep doing that, coach. Hopefully you avoid injury doing that. That's funny. To wrap up, coach, I give every guest what I kind of call a 60-second soapbox. It's your platform to kind of get out a final message, a closing thought, a final idea, just something that you want to leave the listeners with, and you can kind of take it in any direction. And I'm not going to time you either, so if you go over 60 seconds, that's okay too. So I'm just going to turn the floor over to you, coach, and I'm just going to let you take it from here.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you again for having me on. I love this game. I love where this game has taken me. I love what this game has brought me when it comes to friends, to coaches, to relationships, to sad times, to happy times, to frustrating times. And I just really want to help the next generation of players and students and athletes and people to help love the game as much as I do, to help them put them in the right position to be successful. I think this game can really open doors for people. It can expand minds. It can build life lessons. It can build positive and even negative relationships that ultimately build your character. And I think it can do some really amazing things for some people that never thought imaginable. So I think if everyone has any questions, concerns, any topics you want to talk to me about, my DMs are always open. My Instagram is Coach_Ryan Playfast, PLAYFAST. My Twitter is Lundvall. It's LUNDVALL_Ryan. Hit me up if you have any questions like that. If you want to just talk hoops, I'm always ready to talk hoops. I love this game so much. There's times where I need to go to bed or watching film or being like, dude, go anywhere else today. But I'm always on my phone, learning new drills, learning new skills. So I think kind of teaching that passion for the game is what I want to do for the next generation. Help them understand that even though it is still a game with a ball and a hoop, it can really take you to some amazing places, to meet some amazing people. So I appreciate you for allowing me to share my story and fulfill this passion of mine. So
Awesome, coach. I really appreciate you coming on, talking about training, talking about recruiting, just talking about all the different unique experiences you've had, both as a player and as a coach. And I look forward as you continue at Pfeiffer University and all the great things that I think you and your staff are going to do there. So, Coach Lundvall, really appreciate you coming on and have a great season this upcoming year. Thank you.
thank you, man. You as well.
And thank you all for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. We will see you guys next time.